Hello and welcome back. I'm going to do a series of videos to do with putting microphones on saxophones. We're going to start with some cabled ones, and in probably a second video we'll also look at sort of the difference when you start to stick radio mics for saxophones on them and what sort of things that happen when you do that. Well, to start it off, what I've done is gather up a collection of mics that I would put on the saxophones that I record. Some are sort of favourites. Well, AKG 414. There are very few things that don't respond to a 414. And pretty much they capture the noise that comes out of the things and they work. But they are quite crisp, they're a bit sort of cold sounding, and sometimes they react quite badly to saxes and sax players who are a bit bright and breathy, and they can be a bit sort of cutting. So it's not actually a microphone for every player, although I guess we're probably up to 90% of people would be quite happy with the sound of one of these. Sometimes I might be tempted to use a 320. Now the RE20 and the 320 are similar in how they work. The 320 has got a rather useful little switch on it that changes the frequency response. I think the idea is that you can then use them on kick drums and things like that, although I very rarely do. But sometimes that comes in handy. It gives you an alternate sort of tone from the thing, and they're quite nice. I don't use them very often at all, but plenty of people do, and that is the Sennheiser 421s. A dynamic microphone, bit odd. I tend to use them on percussion, sometimes on brass, but they do a pretty good job on saxophones too. They're just a bit rare in people's mic boxes, I think. And I don't know about anybody else, but I always have a problem with these damn things falling off the stand. This stand mount that slides on and off, I've always found to be a real pain. And it just never seems to sort of go on particularly smoothly. Sometimes they go on and they're rock solid. Other times you'll stick them on, you think you've got it clicked in, and for some strange reason it pulls off. It's just a very strange design on the way that this thing fits in. I mean, it works, it's fine, but it's one of those microphones that even with my clumsiness, I always tend to make sure that it doesn't come off. And even then, sometimes when you're trying to attach it to the stand, somehow it manages to come undone. I don't know whether I knock the button on the bottom or what, but the 421 is just a slightly annoying with that mic. Now the other option you've got are for microphones that you don't use a microphone stand and you clip them on. So it'll be a microphone on a little gooseneck. This is a really cheap one. These are less than 25 quid. Alctron. So you can use these, I think they're called 500s, M500s. But basically a little clip on the bottom with a rubberized sort of set of jaws, little bendy part, and then a little tiny condenser in the end. This particular one comes with a preamp that is inside the XLR extended body here. This really is just a tube and the preamp is inside it, and then there is the standard 3-pin mini XLR that's on there, little switchcrafty type thing, and if you stick that on there it converts that, which if you have the right radio mic pack would go straight into it, but that will let you use this one on a conventional mixer input, and they're not even that expensive. The other sort of one that sometimes comes into mind, similar sort of thing made by Shure. To be honest, it's a bit more chunky. Everything is sort of beefed up. It's got rather a bigger thing on the end, although most of that, to be honest, is taken up with a windshield. So there's like a little plastic frame around them. This goes over the top, that sort of pops on there. And you've got a bit of wind protection, handy for brass when they're going full tilt. There's quite a lot of wind noise comes out of those. Same style of sort of extended XLR plug, but this particular one doesn't come off. It has a little clip on it, so you can attach it to your belt or something like that, so that if you trip over the cable, you don't sort of wrench the cable away. Of course, with all these, if you start attaching cables to saxophones, the player has got to sort of drag a cable around with them, and it sort of limits movement. Hence why we'll be looking at some radio versions in a future video. But these microphones here are a bit of a starting off point. The problem comes when you try and put them on the instruments. So what I've set up here is a 414 to start with. And I'm going to do everything that I tell people not to do. I'm aiming it towards the bell of the saxophone. Because to be perfectly honest, for a lot of things on stage, aiming it in there is a thing you can keep sort of constant and accurate. You know, if you've actually sort of put it in the right position, the player's going to do that while they're playing. But it's pretty much aiming in the right place. And on stage, you really need that sort of guarantee that it's not going to go wrong. So aiming into the bell, which tonally is completely wrong, because the best sound probably comes from this section of the sax. But that's workable. Doing it any other way is perhaps a little bit risky. So let's have a go. Now remember that the 414 is not that far away from the bell, and what comes out of the bell is always going to be compromised, and it will absolutely need EQ to make it sound natural. But this is what it's going to sound like. So that's the 414 squirting straight down the bell. If we adjust the mic to give it a bit more sort of general coverage, it means moving it away slightly and tilting it up. Let's have a go at that. Now that's a different tone, isn't it? So what do you think? That's the 414. It's two variations on theme. So one is just sounds a bit nicer to my ears, and the other one is safer, because you're going to, on stage where it's loud, getting the mics in close is always better, and perhaps accepting a slightly compromised sort of position and then fixing it with EQ is okay. That was the raw sax sound. I'm going to play it back now with a bit of reverb and a bit of EQ to try and balance those two up, see what you think. So we've swapped 414 condenser's gone, EV320, the dynamic in its place. Let's try exactly the same things again, see what this one sounds like. Okay, so there we've got sticking it down the bell of the sax. Best thing to do now is to readjust and aim it in that alternative sort of full length position and see what the difference on this microphone is. So that's the EV in those two positions. I guess the simplest thing to do now is swap it out to that 421 and try that one as a comparison as well. Let's move it to position 2, the whole instrument. So that's the two on the 421. Now the next one is going to be setting up to use the clip-on mics. There is one thing you need to listen out for once we move on. It's not just the sound of the saxophone that you can hear. Listen carefully and you'll hear something else. So that's it. That's how it fits on. Now those jaws are quite tight, but it wobbles. It's sort of okay. Jammed as hard as it'll go. Ooh. So that's the snag. The angle of dangle changes. So just there we've got wobbliness. Shove it all the way on the curve of this sax bell. It sort of forces that mic into slightly difficult. I mean, I can. That's probably that's probably better. And then twist it round. Well, you know, that's not as visible from a distance. So if you're recording or you're doing live sound on a sax player, those little adjustments of where that microphone actually points, you can't see from a distance. You can see it hasn't sort of fell off, but you really don't know if it's pointing left, right, up or down. And you don't know how close you are to it pinging off. It's not just that this is a cheapie, you know, as I said, it's less than 25 quid. But, you know, at the very least, I would probably put a cable tie through those little covers there with the little slots and just tie that onto there, or tape, whatever the player's happy with, because bear in mind, a lot of players are very precious. So it needs securing, just in case you stand on the damn thing. And it needs dressing away from the pads. It is a bit of a pain. But let's have a go and see what the sound is like. So that's the cheap Alctron. Now we'll try it with the Shure as an alternative. Now the Shure is slightly different. I mean, it's probably easier to position. I can get it down over there and push fully home. That's actually not too bad. Let's give this one a blast and see what actually happens. The Shure was slightly hotter, so I've had to drop the preamp gain a little bit. There's just enough extra length on this Shure, and it has got like little stop positions on the adapter. So what I can do on here is I can move that back. It's got like, if I move it back a couple of positions, I can actually point it up. So now I'm aiming there. So I've probably got that sort of range from this cardioid. I've never tried that, but it does mean I can get it just a little bit further away. I wonder if that gives us a better balance. I'll give it a go and see. I've never tried this, so this is a bit of a new one on me. I have no idea what it's going to sound like, not pointing down the bell. But as it has that extra adjustment on here, maybe that's going to be good. Let's give it a go. Let's go up to the top bit. I wonder, I've got to go and listen to that now. Let's see what happens. Well, there are a few things that have happened actually. I decided not to keep repeating it with the reverb and the slight EQ. Mainly because I think it spoils your impression of what it sounds like. So after the first one, it was just dry and flat EQ. I think that's fairer. All things considered, most of those conventional cable mics did pretty well. But neither of the two clip-ons did. Did you notice the very first one we had absolutely dreadful noise from the keys? As I actually pushed the keys down, bang, 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 bang. It was like a percussive sort of element to every single note played. So much so that I think, on balance, I don't think that mic is usable. The noise from this saxophone going up the gooseneck into the capsule, the coupling is just insufficient. The Shure was better a bit. I think when we had it in close and it was clipped on the bell, the sheer volume of the sax that the mic was sort of collecting meant that the level could be down a bit, and of course that will knock down the mechanical sound. This is more flexible. The actual thing here, it actually bends quite a lot, so there is some reduction. The other one is much more stiff. So I think this performed a bit better than the cheap one, which I suppose is fair. But then, did you notice when I moved it further away, I thought the sound sort of opened up and became less sort of boxy sounding, you know, less poking down the hole. But as soon as that happened, the level of course dropped, and then, yeah, the percussive sound was picked up yet again. So I have to say that was a bit of a shame, because I sort of had hopes that that would be all right, but no, it wasn't going to be any good. Now, realistically, what does this mean in practice? It means that a microphone on a stand pointing either into the bell or at the keys is going to beat these things. These things are a compromise. If a player is going to run about on the stage and sort of do a candy dolfer, wandering all over the place, you need the microphone on the sax, you know, probably with a radio pack, no cables, and they can go where they like. And you have to just suffer the fact that that percussive stuff is going to be there. Live, you might not notice it because you'll have fiddled with the EQ, you'll have put some reverb on and stuff like that, and it disguises it all, makes it sound nicer. But can you imagine what a clean feed for a recording would have sounded like? Pretty horrible. So, as yet, I've not found a clip-on that sounds as good as I want. Out of those mics we use, the 320, the 414, the 421, I'm not really sure any of them perform badly. I think the 414 was the brightest. I think the 421 was probably the mellowest, and the 320 in the middle was perhaps for me the winner. But it's entirely up to you. What did you think? It's been a bit, well, it's been a bit odd, this review, because I didn't get the result I actually expected. Did you? Let me know in the comments below. Please, like everyone else on YouTube, if you did enjoy it, please do the like and subscribe thing, because it really, really appears on the stats. Lots of people don't like my laid-back approach. I know that. I don't worry, and I don't bother in the least. But I'd rather do videos that you can get something out of. So if you leave me some comments, even if they're awful, I've had a few awful ones lately, and I don't mind. I do actually appreciate them when people tell me that I got something wrong or messed up or didn't do it right. That is really handy stuff. Anyway, see you on the next video. Look after yourselves. Take care.